In this video, we are going to talk about the remote backend options you have available to you in Scalr. Currently, it breaks down into two categories. The Scalr backend, which includes full feature functionality of Scalr, including the use of the Terraform and OpenTofu CLI, or any remote backend that is supported by Terraform or OpenTofu, such as AWS, S3, GCP, Azure, etc. Some customers prefer to use a backend such as S3 as they already have all of their state there. They might have compliance reasons, or the main goal is to get all of their Terraform or OpenTofu runs to execute it in a single platform to enable policy, automation, collaboration, and don't necessarily want to change the state location. In Scalr, you have the option of actually setting the remote backend per environment. So I'm at the Scalr account scope, and the way Scalr is set up is that you can have multiple environments assigned to whether it's going to be teams, applications, projects, or whatnot. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and create an environment, and we'll just call this demo backend. And in this case, I want to disable the Scalr remote backend, and it's just going to let us know that there's certain things like CLI-driven runs that are not possible because there's no way to authenticate to Scalr if you're not using it as a backend. When using Scalr as a backend, you're going to add a remote backend block with credentials and how to authenticate. But if we don't have that in there, then we can't use the CLI. So let's go ahead and create that environment. And what I'm also going to do with that environment is we have a provider configuration enabled on it. So we already have an AWS provider configuration, which is our way to authenticate to AWS when we're creating resources in AWS. But in this case, I actually want to use it to authenticate to my remote backend, being, in this case, I'm going to use S3. So I'm going to export the provider configuration as shell variables into the run pipeline, which allows us not only to use this for our Terraform resources, but also allows us to use it to authenticate to the S3 bucket that our state file and other objects are going to be stored in. So those are the main components to start. So we have our provider configurations, we have our VCS providers. So those are some of the basics that you need. But what we're going to do now is just go into that environment, create a workspace, and show you how the workflow works when using a non-Scalr backend. Now we jumped into the environment where your end users are going to create workspaces. And let's just create a basic workspace here. So you first off are going to select your configuration source. In this case, because I'm using a non-Scalr backend, we're really only going to be able to use VCS or a module-based workspace source, or of course you can use the API. So I'm going to go ahead and select the VCS provider I've created. And I already have a repository that I created in GitHub named demo backend that we're going to go ahead and link to it. And that is pretty much all I need at this point. Can't forget to put in a name. And now we're essentially ready to execute some runs. So what I'm going to do is jump into this repo that I've created. And what we're going to see in the backend is that I've set the Terraform backend for S3. I've enabled a bucket. Again, that provider configuration that I linked to my workspace into my environment has access to this bucket. So my authentication is already taken care of. So all I need to do at this point is go into my main.tf, and I'm just going to use a null resource provider for timing purposes here. And let's just make a quick update to this. We'll just duplicate this and execute it again. And now I'll go ahead and commit changes. When that happens, Scalr is automatically going to kick off a run. And there we see it based on those changes coming in and the pull request automation. And it's going to go through a plan, cost estimate phase, policy checks, and then the approval. So when you're using a remote backend other than Scalr's, you still get full policy usage, you still get cost estimation, you still get the full entire pipeline. Okay, so it looks like our run has completed and with a successful apply. And now what I'm going to do is go to S3 and let's just do a quick refresh, as I believe we created a new folder there, which we did. And we'll go into the backend folder. So that's really going to match up if I come into here. That is going to match up with the key backend/demo, and I should see my state file located in there. So here is backend, here is demo, and then we have our state file. If I just click open here, and we see our simple state file with our null resources in there. So that's really it. Given the option to use any type of remote backend for Terraform, OpenTofu, and Scalr, really allows you to have flexibility per team, per environment, Whatever your requirements might be based on, they might be compliance requirements, they might be flexibility based on existing workflows. You now have more options in Scalr to manage your remote backends.